Hi, everyone. Good to be with you again, and thank you for tuning in. I would like to continue a brief reflection on the Acts of the Apostles that I began last week, starting right up at the beginning in chapter 1. Remember, this is a continuation of St. Luke's Gospel, and um, we see some important themes throughout the Acts of the Apostles, as I mentioned last time, that the theme of moving from Judaism and the customs and the traditions of Judaism moving now into something else, which ultimately, of course, will become the church, Christianity. The other thing is the working and the involvement of the Holy Spirit. So we will see that right up front here in chapter 1 of Acts. Luke begins this book by linking it to the Gospel of Luke. He begins by saying, in the first book, Theophilus, and Theophilus is a name, obviously. It may be more symbolic than a real person, but Theophilus means lover of God. And so that could be any of us, any reader of both the Gospel and of the book of the Acts of the Apostles. And he says how in his first book he dealt with the public ministry of Jesus through his death and his ascension. And now, with this book, the story continues. And Luke retells the story of the ascension, which he concluded the gospel with, and he includes a prophetic voice at the time of the ascension, telling of the coming of the Spirit that will empower the apostles. They, the 11 with Mary, Jesus' mother, and other women and brothers, Luke says, are gathered in Jerusalem. Jerusalem, which is representative of the center of Judaism. And so this church begins in Jerusalem, which is the center of Judaism. As we know throughout the Gospels, Jesus is always on his way up to Jerusalem to experience his passion. And now they begin in Jerusalem, this new mission, this new part of the story, and ultimately it will end in Rome, which Luke refers to as the ends of the earth. And so there is this movement, again, from Judaism to Christianity. As we move along in chapter 1, we have the first of the speeches. Remember last week I spoke about how speeches play a prominent role and provide us with the witness that the disciples, that the apostles are called to give. It's all in the speeches. In the Gospels, Jesus gave the speeches, but now the apostles, the disciples, specifically Peter and Paul. And so Peter gives this first speech in chapter 1, beginning in verse 15. And it is a speech regarding the successor of Judas. Peter is the spokesperson. He's the chief of the apostles, and so he is the unofficial, or I guess even the official leader of that group. They are 11 now, and they are going to choose a successor. Right away, we hear that Peter stands to address the assembly. I believe there's about 120 persons that he's addressing, Luke says. Interesting thing here is that the traditional Jewish posture of teaching is sitting, but we are told that Peter stands to address the crowd. And so again, this transition from the traditional practices of Judaism to something new. The last that we heard from Peter in Luke's gospel was when he betrayed Jesus. And so Peter has experienced a change. God's hand, the Spirit at work already. He tells the story of Judas' death. Now, traditionally, we get this from St. Matthew's Gospel, we're told that Judas hanged himself. But Luke doesn't tell that version. He quotes David in the Psalms, and he says that psalm is fulfilled by Judas buying land with the betrayal money and then somehow accidentally falling on the land and being killed. Luke quotes the Hebrew scriptures, building upon Judaism, and then moving into something different, moving away from Judaism. He quotes the Hebrew scriptures. And finally, Matthias. All right, it was Matthias and Barsabbas who were two possible choices. And after praying, Matthias was chosen. After the apostles prayed, Matthias was chosen. God's hand at work, the prompting of the Holy Spirit in the choice of Matthias. At the end of the chapter 1, we see the movement from customs of Judaism to something new, teaching while standing. In addition, we see the promptings of the Holy Spirit, even though Pentecost has not occurred yet. So next chapter, chapter 2, is the descent of the Holy Spirit. So please continue to read along. You could read way ahead of me if you want, but my commentaries will come every now and again. You could always go back if you've already read what I'm speaking about. But I hope this is helpful. God bless. We miss you. Hope to see you soon.